Welcome to Ego Netcast. I am Martin Lindeskog. Welcome, Sebastian Muravchik.
Thank you.
And how do you pronounce your name? I asked that in the green room, but you could please repeat to our listeners so they know when they greet you.
It's Sebastian Muravchik or Seb Muravchik.
Yeah. And you are originally from South America?
I was born in Argentina, and I lived there for. I grew up there, and I moved here quite a while ago to the UK.
Yep.
And I've been here ever since.
Yeah, great. So you reached out to me through email and said you had things going on here with a new single coming out, you could call it, about your door. It's in July 10th. Is planning to be released, right?
Yeah. It's my project SNS Sensation, and the single is called Your Door.
Yeah. And SNS, is that a short form for sensation?
Yes, it ended up. I ended up calling it SNS Sensation because there were too many SNS acts and too many sensation acts, and it was getting all muddled and difficult. So there's no act called SNS Sensation that I know of.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a bit long, but it's I still like the sound of it.
Yeah.
So.
And that's good that you're saying that, because that's one of the segment here that I do, a so-called ego search. I call it myself, but it's like ego surfing on your own name or somebody else's names or a band name, whatnot.
Yeah.
So when I search on your name, Sebastian, I found like 954 results there. First, it was like photos, and then this old site, this discography, that is recording different songs and labels and artists and write about them, like a gold mine there. And then Instagram account, Twitter account that you have used some years ago, and then NTS Live Radio London. Can you tell a bit about that station?
Yeah, I think that was an SNS DJ set I did there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you have been a DJ also in past, or you're still that?
I used to do a lot of DJing. Yes, I haven't done much lately, but I would be very happy to go back to doing that. It's lots of fun, very rewarding stuff. Yeah,
great. And your, as I said, in your band called Heartbreak, with your band member there, he's a DJ, right?
Yes, he's a producer and a DJ. Yeah.
Because I saw one of your live performance there. That was interesting to see on stage there when you did singing, and he was taking care of the keyboards and others, and also some, how to say, singing with like a decoder, or what do you call it?
It's
like
called a vocoder. Yeah,
vocoder.
Vocoder. Yeah, it has this robotic kind of. It's basically the voice or whatever sound you're playing through the microphone, going through the synthesizer, and becoming, merging into some robot kind of otherworldly entity.
Yeah.
Which is very important for electronic music, isn't it? There's a lot of the, I think, Kraftwerk stuff had that kind of thing.
Correct. That kind of sound. And then you had Instagram account, and as I said, we talked about Twitter also. But then it was also an interview here with that you sent also by email, the Electricity Club. It was a interview with the band Heartbreak there. So that come up on the first page as a good result. And then, of course, Spotify account, Vimeo, and YouTube. And also you had another radio station there, Intergalactic FM from the Netherlands. What's that?
Yeah, I mean, that used to be the CBS cybernetic broadcasting system. That was the radio initially that we used to listen to when we were starting with a Heartbreak, and even before that. And that was one of the main stations that Magic Waves that we used to listen to a lot, and where we drew a lot of inspiration from. A lot of it is instrumental electronic music, some stuff with vocals, a lot of old disco with vocals, particularly European kind of Italo disco, that kind of sound.
Yeah.
And that was hugely influential for us. But he was, we were writing songs, but being inspired by instrumental music. So that's always been a bit of an interesting challenge, I think.
Mm. Is it there in the Netherlands and also in Belgium and others that this kind of music, the electronic body music, and also, as you said, Italo disco and synth pop, is that still very popular in this area of Europe?
Yeah, I think so. It's it kind of started in the 80s, but I think it retained. People were still interested in it through the years, and kind of that interest has kind of grown quite a bit in the last 10 years or so, I'd say. Okay. So they're like waves, but disco is disco. It's always going to be there because it's one of the music's great kind of inventions, one of the great genres, one of the greatest music types that's ever been. It's a bit like jazz. We can still listen to jazz and find some really relevant musical experiences with it, or even some classical stuff. And it has had its heyday, I suppose, commercially, but it's still relevant, and it's still an influence on what we do. Both disco and other genres like the ones you were mentioning, EBM and so on.
Yeah, because I remember one of first memories there was on a club when Front 242 came, and it was sometime even 85 or something like that, I think. Maybe
Did
later.
You see them live?
Yeah.
Cool. Great.
And they had the whole...
That must have been something.
Yeah. The whole style with the military things and so on. And I remember the so-called review in the big newspaper. You wonder if that journals have been there or written in afterwards, because it's very different style of music, and they were in a way had their attitude or their style, and maybe... Yeah, they played on that, but it was interesting to then learn that this kind of music was very popular in Belgium, and they were on top list there, in general top list for the general audience. And back in the day, 1980, I remember the Eurovision Song Contest, you could almost say a parody called Eurovision, that song with Telex. And how
Telex, yeah, amazing song, amazing band,
so,
Great
so they
influence,
won in Belgium, but then I think they came almost not the last, but in the bottom of the list in the total contents. But I thought it was a funny song, and it was a parody of the whole contest, and that band was it was, and that's maybe we could talk more about. It sometimes could be hard to point out what kind of style or what kind of music is it. And when I've listened to the songs that you sent to me, you get this. It is synth pop, but it's some more. So could you explain in a short way your latest pieces here? What kind of music is it?
Well, it's an extremely difficult question, but
Next question.
So much so that I have been asking people, what is it that I do? What do I do? It's synth pop because they are pop songs, and they kind of structured as pop songs, and it has this synthesizers on them and arpeggios and the influence of Kraftwerk, and but there's a very strong element of disco. Disco is hugely important. I'd say disco is probably more important to me, quite a lot more important to me than synth pop as an influence. So it's, I think, the whole kind of journey, and the reason why it ends up being something that escapes definition, which is not a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. Although there's some it's kind of difficult to promote when it's difficult to define. But
if you don't create your own category, like James have done, James Knight's Britalo. So
You're right. Yeah. No, but there's so much musical kind of background influences playing a part on them, and you're not really thinking about what kind of music or what kind of song this is. You're more thinking about how good is it, and how strong do I feel about it. So that's kind of the focus, and what it ends up happening, I think, is that you do get the best music that you're able to produce at that time, the best music that you've got to offer as an artist. But it does end up escaping, genre definition, and that's just have to, that's my choice. My choice is to make my life difficult by producing the best music that I can, and then dealing with the consequences. But it's also, it's an interesting challenge, because I think one of the reasons why this happens is not just the great amount of influences that there is behind it, and how they manifest themselves in kind of sneaky ways. It's not very obvious what it is that I'm doing. I don't even know what I'm doing. It's just coming out like that kind of thing but I do a lot of listening. I listen to loads and loads of music, and I've done that over the years. I'm constantly listening to music, so all that stuff kind of I think about it, but I also just listen to it, and it kind of seeps into my subconscious, I suppose. But I think it also has a lot to do with drawing so much inspiration from instrumental music, because that puts you in a difficult position. You don't really know what you're doing. You're not aligned with a very clear kind of tradition. And I think these things, it's a good thing to do, to try and say, okay, this is what I do, and it's influenced by something other than the kind of thing that I do. It's one of it's not that I consciously went about it, that when I said that's going to work really well. It's more like it just happened. But having seen it happen, I think it's a great creative strategy. Apart from this musical aspect of working this way, there's also I'm quite interested in philosophy without being an academic or qualified academic on it, but I've always been quite interested in philosophy and thinking, this kind of world, the thinking world, the world, the mind. Particularly being impacted by French philosophy in the 60s and the 70s, post-structuralism, and then kind of the postmodern kind of analysis ideas and things like that, and connected with surrealism and the altered thoughts. Goes to me, it kind of goes all the way back to Heraclitus. And the kind of Socratic madness that
everything
that
is a flux, and we could have a discussion and even a debate, because but that's probably for another show, I think. But it's interesting.
But I would say this flux thing you're talking about, that's really, really, really important to me. It manifests itself in the creative action as flow. And also this idea of the becoming has been hugely foundational, I would say, to what I do in my music, but also when I perform, particularly when I used to perform with Heartbreak. The becoming was the essence of where I was drawing all my creative energy to perform.
Yeah. And a
mixture of that and death anxiety, I used to call it, the becoming, and mixed with death anxiety, and then you get that metal kind of stance. You work quite nicely. Yes.
Yeah. And that's what I could see there from one of the video clip that you said, Heartbreak. And that was, as I said, when we talked in the green room, before the internet age, you could say. So could you have some reflection on that when you created that album and also out touring? And then you also got on with the gigs, like, was it Little Bots and so on, and others, like pretty big names in the I don't really know how to classify that music, but I like her music, the Little Bots there. So
a lot of those acts were influenced by synthpop in some way. So we toured a lot with them and supported some bigger acts as well. We were lucky to have those opportunities. We toured the US, been to many places in Europe and Russia and so on. So we had some great gigs all over the world, which is quite an experience. It was lovely. And but back then, as you say, the whole internet thing was just about kicking off as a. It didn't have as central a role as it has today in the music world. Some acts were having blogs, and it was this thing that they were doing. And okay, I mean, we didn't.
And you were on
had
MySpace, right?
Yes, we were. Yeah. MySpace was like, oh my God, what everyone is in there. Oh,
Yeah.
hey, right. Yeah. But I think the main thing there is that we had with Heartbreak, we had kind of there was a bit of a reaction to this idea of the new, the novelty, the new style, the new thing. We used to think back then that the new kind of up and coming hot new style, new trend was old. It felt old to be searching for the new. And the only thing that was truly new, that was just emerging there, was the archive, where we weren't looking forward to find the new, but we were looking backwards to find the new. So we were constantly discovering not just these Italo disco gems that we hadn't heard before, and we did it via the internet and so on, but and Discogs and all this vinyl kind of selling places. But it was just the whole history of the world, I think, and the whole history of music for sure was being redefined rather than continued. There was no longer a continuation, and this kind of fits quite well within this whole kind of postmodern idea, where things, there's this, Heraclitus has this idea of the becoming, that everything being constantly in flux. And I think Parmenides, who I'm not so knowledgeable of, but I think it's it's generally posed as the opposite thing, where everything is actually always the same, and always everything that's ever happened or will happen is all kind of happening at the same time, something like that. And I think I always think, well, like, not necessarily exclusive, because, and there's this Borges is an important Argentinian writer. I don't know if you come across his stuff, but he's also kind of talking about this multiverse, there's many different dimensions of existence. I think it's an element of all this happening, and the crisis back then was the crisis of the new. I think there was a crisis of this idea of the new. Everything, it was like a couple of years later, there was a new trend and there's a new development, and usually accompanied by a new technology and so on. And we thought that the most important technology at the time was the technology of rewriting history, of redefining what actually went on, which is linked with a lot of things like, our understanding of that history and our ability to understand what other people are thinking, how other people think about history. If you're raised in Europe, and if you always lived in Europe, then you will have an idea of history that is probably quite different from people that have lived in South America or all their lives and have seen something else, a different balance in power and so on. So you could go on and on and on, but it's I think it was an interesting thing, and not everyone agreed, and I don't think the industry particularly loved that idea, because it makes a bit difficult. It makes it difficult for them to kind of sell the new stuff, because now, what is the new stuff? Well, the new stuff is a new consciousness, and I don't know how to market or price that. It will take some time figuring that out, but I think we're going to have to, because now we're seeing, people are becoming aware of what's been going on, how tough it's been for some people, and how the way things were isn't what it used to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's it's you could, as I said to another person here, you could learn from the history and you live in it today, and then plan for the future. So that's
yes.
And I mean, it's coming up Independence Day here in America, and I've studied and worked there. And also, you have the history of European history, and as you said, in South America, and what we could learn from that. And we'll come back to your new stuff here and what's going on in the world now. When I did a search then on SNS sensation on Google, I also found this site called Submit Hub. Do you recognize that one?
Yes.
It was.
I've only learned about it
Yeah.
I only learned about this site recently. Yeah, it's it's good.
Yeah, it said it was created here in late 2015 by a music blogger Jason Krishkov in this shuffle. The mission is to efficiently and transparently connect artists with curators. And then I went over to DuckDuckGo, this privacy search engine, and there I found an article, seen and heard Italo disco music in The Guardian, and also then the record label that you had for Heartbreak, Lies, and Lex Records. And also then on Bandcamp is something, a site that I have recently also found out and liked, and adding wish list and following artists and so on. So could you tell a bit more about that, like a community for musicians, and how you find maybe inspiration, maybe other artists you could collaborate with, but also how to reach out to your fans, and if it's, as I said, hard to be labeled and you don't want to be labeled, but how do you be found, and how could you find others? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, yes, I have some thoughts on that because I am thinking about that a lot, especially lately since I started releasing music again. Yeah, I mean, it's it's finding that that balance, I suppose. It's not really a balance because the music comes first, but then you do need to figure out how can you communicate with other people, and I think one of the key challenges of the current kind of technological kind of structure of the world is that it really forces you, particularly with the social media, it forces you to really figure out what other people are thinking and how other people are feeling about the information that reaches them and the music that they get to experience, and that I think is obviously a very, very positive thing, and it kind of ties in with this new understanding of the world and its history. We beginning to really make some tangible progress, I think, in our understanding of what other people go through, and it goes from marketing your music to how you position yourself, politically, and the things that you do to try and help in the world. So in that sense, I think it's a positive thing. It's a positive challenge. You're no longer trying to seduce record labels and understand the gatekeeper, and it's more about really communicating with other human beings, other music lovers, and trying to figure out how you can reach out to them, and the more you learn about that, the more you understand that it's about communication. So it isn't just about writing music and sending it through a channel for other people to have whatever experience of it they want, and you never get to hear about it. You generally are a lot more in touch with fans and listeners, I think, and that's that can only be a good thing for the artist, unless you're in a bit of an ego trip and you're trying to trying to acquire power out of it, and then that's then I don't know, that's going to be a bit more troublesome. But people that are addicted to power will always find a way, so I'm not worried about them.
No.
I think they'll be fine. Yeah.
Yeah. It's and that's a good thing that you could, as I said, vote with your that's expression, vote with your pocketbook and or your with your wallet, but also that you want to support creators. And now we talked about also in the green room, but how the advantages of, in a way, old technology, audio quality way, like vinyl, and back in the day that I am often listening to the music from the 20s and 30s with 78 rounds that have this happy music that I like to, and you have to have this special gramophone and so on. But then it's also the convenience to have a stream of music, and you get tips on new music and so on. So it's interesting how you could find it. It's a jungle out there, but it's also opportunities out there. So
yeah, absolutely. And the only thing that I think needs to be done is somehow, I don't know how, but somehow we should try and aim to make sure that the understanding of how powerful the musical experience is with vinyl or tape is, so that there is enough awareness of how different it is to own a vinyl record than it is to learn about music through streaming or experience music in the streaming kind of platforms or downloading and so on, the digital. I mean, it's it's a difficult thing, because until you do it, until you actually experience, having the vinyl in your hands, putting on the record player and moving the needle and all this stuff, you're unlikely to know about it. How would you know if you haven't been through it? I mean, it's difficult to explain. It's not so easy to explain. Okay, you can talk about the physical ritual and being able to see this artwork quite big and so on, but until you do it, you won't feel it.
And I'm happy to experience this. I must say, right now I don't have functional working stereo. I stream, but I had with product placement to joke a Denon, and it was I remember that how I was going to a so-called regular music store, but then it was a fellow student that said, I mean, go to some experts, and it was called in Gothenburg, Sweden, Hi-Fi Club. And there I went to somebody who knows about audio, but also not a pushy salesperson. They really wanted to know what I was listening to, what kind of budget I had, etc. So I had ended up with a small stereo equipment, and it was not about how loud the speaker you could have. It was more about the sound and the quality, and that it will fit me. So it was a pretty simple setup, but still it cost, of course, money back in the day.
Yeah,
but I enjoyed it very much, but it was a big step for me to do that. And but I liked it, and I had it for many years. But in a way, that's history for me. But it's fun to see the revival with like DJs and bands that are now recording vinyl, like for fans and for collections and so on. And still, as you said, it is a special feeling to have it. But then you have to have space also. You have to have a space for the stereo and for the. And I remember back in the day also how to handle the records and so on. And I remember, I mean, back then later on you learn about that, your mistakes and so on. And you also know that you have a special your record collection. I still have records, but some when I went over to America, I gave some of a Swedish synth pop band called Page to a friend, because I know that she cherished them very much, and I thought that could be a great gift. Because I don't know, otherwise you don't know where the records could go to. And also, if you go with some special music, you didn't get much for it then, but now maybe it's a different things. But then it's how you handle it also. So I think it has phases, but you have to understand and remember the history in order to appreciate. and also see the futures of it. So yeah,
But I think
fascinating.
when you've had the experience of having vinyl
Yeah.
and listening to a lot of music via vinyl, then you get used to the kind of the predisposition that you need to have before you listen to music, and then it doesn't matter so much whether you're streaming or how you're playing it, because you have now the habit of predisposing yourself physically and mentally to enjoying a bunch of sounds that if you're not thinking the right way, they're just sounds. They're not they don't do anything. It's a bit like a religion. You have these massive churches with the big echo and so on, because it predisposes you to believe in these things, which some people might think are mumbo jumbo, as they say, just and the same with the sounds. What is this sound? This okay? It's singing a melody. There's a synthesizer. There's a drum machine, or there's a guitar. There's just sounds. That it could easily mean nothing. So when you're physically involved with it and you mentally prepare for it and you have those images in your head as well, then you know what it takes to enjoy the power of this thing called music.
Yeah, and as I said, I have a podcast together with two other people, and it invited me to the field of analog devices like a fountain pen and ink and pencils and so on, and writing on paper, and that tactical feeling, and also what you learn from that. And that was the thing. Now it's convenience to stream, but then it was, if you have the single, it take how many minutes are the maximum for a single? Was it 3, 4, 5 minutes or something like that? And then you have to turn to the next side, or max a single.
7 inches,
yeah. So that's the thing also, and as I said about the album cover and when you opened it, and also the order, and when you wanted to buy a full length vinyl, it was often you had a hit or some song that you listened to, but then you should think about your hard earned money, if it was worth to buy the whole album, and then you wanted to listen to that and sample it, and that's the thing.
And you don't want that. You don't want the ability to access music to be restricted. So things are a lot better now. But I think it's a great thing that all these bands are now printing vinyl as well and having that limited edition or whatever, because that does encourage fans to think about that and perhaps have that experience and being able to dedicate themselves to the listening of music, and with more focus, as opposed to just being background sounds. But it is better to be able to know so much more music now than you used to be able to afford so I don't miss the restrictions of not being able to buy a record, not being able to listen to what was in there. But there's certain things like the artwork. The artwork was and is so important. The images that you produce around the sounds are really important, I think, because music is ultimately about imagination, and those images encourage you to find in the sounds images and worlds that wouldn't be there. So I'm not sure how present the artwork is nowadays. You do have social media, but a lot of the social media is about telling a story of the band, following that kind of story, as opposed to seeing more images that encourage you to imagine what this music is, this sound world.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of a worry with streaming. I don't think that the artwork is as present. They have to put ads. They put the ads really big there, but that's not what you want.
I hear you, but I also see opportunities with technology. I see in the future that you will see images in the air, so to speak, like that you could touch or feel, or when it's playing, or new kind of things that we could do together with physical things also.
Oh yeah, that would be great. to have that.
Yeah, but it's depending on again the market and how you could dispute it and so on. But we'll probably see these holograms and other things like that. It's already there in technology-wise, artificial ways and virtual reality and so on. But
Wonderful.
then it should be accessible for it. But one thing that's still old but new, and back in the day when MTV was a music station. But I didn't have access for a long time. But then you had these music videos, and now you have that with. That's one important thing, and that's when you sent the email. It was a video about your new song that will be released soon here. Could you tell about that? The door. I mean, it's a simple video in a way. It's a bit both comforting, but also a bit scary, and it's very personal. Also, I mean, you are in that, I reckon, and also other people. So, could you tell about that, and also how the follow up was to the small world?
Yes. But before I tell you more about that, you just said that you found some of it quite scary, and I'm really interested to hear a bit more about it.
Yeah.
What did you find scary about it?
Seb, I'm a sensitive person, so I mean, I don't like horror movies or something like that. But I still would say that Hitchcock was a great, movie maker. But and I enjoyed that. But I had this feeling of it, like doors closing open, the staircase, the shadows, and so on, and also the boy that was writing and looking out, so-called, it was locked down. And is locked in, and then I don't want to tell the whole thing because people will see that when it's released, but it has a story. So that's my expression. I always want a happy ending, and right now we are midst of the situation that it is. But I want to see the hope and opportunities. But I know how it is also, and how it has an impact on us, and especially for younger. I don't think about age in a way, but it will have impact on younger generation about this, why this happened, the restrictions, how to be locked in, not out and playing and so on, but also opportunities, what you could learn from it. Maybe the older generation would understand that, but so that's my reaction to it.
Well, that's great, and that's really interesting to hear. Obviously, and it's we coincide on some of those aspects a lot, I would say. But I think in part what the video was doing is adding this other element that isn't there on the song, and this is partly what I like about video work, how it expands the music rather than complements it or kind of closes it down, so to speak. So obviously there's the aspect of how this affects other people, particularly kids, and how important it is to obviously keep an eye and keep your mind in because the first thing that you think about when you think about this pandemic is the absolute horror that you're fearing. And the horrible stories that you hear, that you need to hear about, so that you know what's really going on and how grave the matter is, and so on. But then there's other aspects that also need to be balanced into your understanding of the problem that we have right now, and that has to do with the younger generations, so how impressionable they are, and how you need to spend time thinking about how they need to be cared for. Right, and so I thought it was an interesting new kind of layer that the video kind of opens up. Another thing that I really liked about the video, aside from this mental health children's aspect of it, is the internal journey, which is something that I'm really interested in. I think in film, this whole film is about the externalization of the internal. You see images that express internal processes, emotional processes, and so on. And I think kids are probably the most interesting characters there are, because the internal world is so secretive. Not that they are secretive, but it is a mystery to them as well, as they're growing up and figuring things out. And as an adult, it would be a great mystery to you to try and figure out what kids are going through, how they're reacting to things internally, so to speak. So that was a great challenge as a someone that has a bit of a background in film and is quite keen on the film side of things. To be able to work with that. I like the fact that you see a story there, and I think that it's very much a narrative film. I don't want to always be making narrative music videos. I just wanted to do the disclaimer there because it's a lot of work, and I just I gotta be a bit more pragmatic about things. But it was very rewarding in that way. Now the fear side of things is something that I see more in the Small World single. In this one, I see I see a different kind of central sentiment to it. But you found it scary, this particular Your Door video as well.
Yeah, until and I could tell you until the solution, and that the listeners and people watching the video will see. I mean, it has an ending or an opportunity there, and the kid, the actor, grabbed that opportunity. So then I got relieved in a way and saw what's happening. But until
I think that opportunity is
yeah.
It's the opportunity of imagination as well, isn't it? The dreams.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have a life. We have a day-to-day kind of thing we need to go through, and then there's another life that we go through, which is in our dreams and in our imagination, and in the things that we project onto what could be otherwise neutral, inanimate things like a lamp or music. So yeah, it's I'm glad you. I mean, that's. I found that it's really interesting that you felt that fear, because I wasn't thinking that way, and this is one of my favorite things about producing creative work. Hearing, that's why I jumped at the opportunity to ask you about it, because when you hear new interpretations, things that you hadn't thought about in your work, and it makes sense, but you hadn't thought about it, that's just very, very rewarding. One of the most rewarding parts of producing creative work.
Yeah, that's great to hear, and also interesting to learn about new music, and also then the connections, how you had been in talks with James and so on, that we talked in the email conversation. And thanks again for reaching out there. So do you want to tell some more things about your plans, or because as I see it in other, and I will link to that, other interviews that you have had, people had this question was about the pandemic and the situation and the kind of music and the title about the door and the small world, if that was a coincidence or if it was planned or if it's happened like this. And you had already answered that in the interview, but please, you could, if you want to talk a bit more about that, and also your plans for the future here.
Well, you see, when you have a big release planned, like an album, and you produced the physical albums or whatever, I mean, the old model, you know, and you have a whole album that you worked on or an EP, then you haven't got the ability to react to new events, and history is changing so fast nowadays. So many huge things are happening all the time that the single, the digital single in particular, I think it's an interesting, it gives you this opportunity that you were talking about before, you know, opportunity to react to what was going on. And Small World, I mean, I had been writing music for this new kind of phase of SNS sensation, but Small World was a reaction, almost a deviation from the creative direction to some degree that I was going in with my previous music. A reaction to this extraordinary pandemic situation. I think it's a very positive thing that you can actually say, okay, you know what, I'm going to release a single now about what's going on right now, and it's not you don't make this decision as a creator, but you're working with music, and the music kind of writes itself a little bit. But you are the digital single allows you to react to allow the music to react to what's going on in the world, and to the songs to be written, not, you don't have to restrict yourself to plan in a more universal way. You can actually write about what's going on right now. I mean, obviously my songs are never about what's going on right now, but it's more about how what's going on right now relates to existence, life, I mean, in general. And the small world thing and the your door thing, to me, is directly connected to life. There's a lockdown in life, that perhaps is a little bit larger in the options and the scope of what you can choose, but it is there. Life is a wondrous opportunity and a prison. So, and I would even go as far as saying an opportunity is a prison, just like choice.
Yeah, and where we could have a discussion where I'm for the free will there, but I understand where you're coming from. From in your email subject title there, you said the lockdown of your soul, or soul's lockdown. In a way, that could become your own prison, and that's what I see. I want, as I said, I'm an objectivist, and I'm a realist, and an optimist also. But I am a pessimist. Yes. What's going on right now as a citizen journalist, and I'm afraid of what could happen with censorship restrictions, what you're allowed to think about, what you're allowed to say, freedom of expression, etc., etc. And also some people who by free will want to, as I said, restrict themselves also. And it could almost be a paralyzing thing, what's going on now, that you want to, somebody else should tell you what to do. So that's...
when you think about the 30s, if you think about the 30s, what's... we didn't live through it, so we can't really know how what it felt like then. But right now, the challenge that I see, that I think is probably partly what you're afraid of, and partly I'm hoping some of the fears that you found in the video that isn't directly kind of horror inspired, like Small World was. Your door was a lot less horror inspired. But it is that there is an incredibly strong death impulse in a great part of the world's population. An extraordinary large amount of people just want to self-destroy, and that's a really unique new thing. It isn't selfish. The first way that you could read it is it's selfish, but I think it's more worrying than that. I wish it was selfish. It's actually a self-destructive impulse. Clearly. So it is a bit worrying, but a lot of us still believe in life and in fantasy, imagination, love, art, inspiration. There's enough of us to counterweight, and it might just be a trend, and it might just be a reaction to how much people have got to adopt. Because what's happening right now quite fast is that we are making some important progress, despite the gravity of what's at stake and the urgency of what's at stake. We are becoming aware of things a little bit faster than we used to be. I don't know if it's going to be fast enough, and there's plenty of reasons to be scared about how slow we are being at it, but it's also faster than it was, I think, in the past. How we're gaining awareness of what other people are going through other than ourselves. And that's, I think, that can only be a positive thing. So it's just, there's some major challenges that need very fast, rapid action, like plastic. That's one of the massive, great challenges, and the general environmental kind of impact of what we're doing. But yeah. A bit of optimism, a bit of fear, maybe that's what we need.
Yeah, and as we talked about in the green room also, a bit of. Do you drink still yerba mate? As coming from South America. Yeah. Do you have any special recipe, or you tell the listeners about this beverage?
I mean, you could basically spend, you could write a 600-page tome on it, and you would probably fall short. There's so many different versions of what the right way to pour the water on the matter is, and where the straw should be, how you should mix the sherbet before actually pouring, what it is, the distance, or there's a bit of a circle, a semicircle that you need to kind of establish around the straw, and you should pour the water there. Although certain people in Argentina, hearing me say this, would probably want to send me to the electric chair. It's a very hotly kind of contested topic, so I don't want to say too much because I could be putting myself in danger.
Yeah, and you should be safe, Seb. But are you then drinking the beverage that's popular, the second most popular beverage in the world in total, but very popular in England? Do you drink tea?
I drink a lot of tea. Yes.
Do you have any favorite?
Too much.
Yeah.
Well, no. I love a lot of different brews. I like Earl Grey a lot. Like in the English breakfast one, the black tea and regular black tea, and I'm a big fan of peppermint, which also is quite healthy.
Yeah.
I love green tea. I always drink green tea before a gig because it's very good for my for the vocal cords. It cleans you from all the other crap that you take.
Yeah.
I drink coffee. I just drink too much.
Okay.
It's got to stop.
Yeah, you have to take it in doses then. So it was nice talking to you, Seb. And do you have any
Thank you so much.
Ending notes here where people can find you on the interwebs and in cyberspace, and ending
I don't know
thought here? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best first place to land would be Instagram for now. It's SNS. I can't remember what that lower line is called, but
underscore.
There's not hyphen underscore. Yeah.
Yeah.
Disco pop underscore noir, as in film noir, and that's my handle. I think it's called.
Yep.
And just go there first, and we'll direct you to other places after that. I don't know if you'll have the link on this episode.
Yes, I will include that.
Yeah, that's probably the first port of call, as they say. That's start there and see what that feed tells you, how it encourages your imagination to flow.
Great. So thank you very much, Seb, for your time, and thanks again for reaching out through email and spreading the good word here about your music and your thoughts in general.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Yeah. Cheers.
Thanks a lot.